Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jenifer Lansing. Let's get started. Hey guys and gals, in this episode, I want to give you a little bit of a heads up. We initially dive into a pretty high level discussion around birth charts, the planets, moons, transits, and overall general astrology. It might seem a bit complicated at first, but as we get a little deeper, we do begin to chat about real life applications, and we begin to make it more applicable to our kids and how their birth charts and the birth charts of the entire family can make us better as a whole family unit and help us parent more effectively. So Jenifer gives examples on how to structure homeschooling curriculums. She talks about when to schedule surgeries and then the healing times and so many more things. I hope you enjoy. Jenifer Edwards, I am so excited that you're here. Thank you. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Me too. I feel like we're best friends. We've only chatted 5 times. It's fun. Okay, let me introduce you quick and then we'll just jump right into it. So Jenifer Edwards is a Maine-based astrologer, Reiki 3 practitioner, and a cartomancer, which is a tarot card reader. She established Thank Goddess in 2017 as a space to combine modalities to guide others into following their soul's purpose. She currently leads women in her online Moon Lodge group into better self-understanding through the tool of astrology and universal consciousness. Okay, astrology. Should we just dive right in?
Sure.
What exactly is it that you do? Let's start there.
So when I see a client, well, let's start off of what my intentions are.
I like that.
For the people around me. I use astrology as a tool to understand how concepts and constructs go on in the mind and where people need guidance to perhaps remove preconceived judgments into that they have that don't allow them to receive universal consciousness. And this comes through patterns that show up in the birth chart, as well as patterns of judgment that have been absorbed through our whole lifetime. My theory on existence, as where we stand as adults, at least as myself as a 44-year-old woman, is that when we're born of the vibration of love, of universal consciousness. And everything from that point from birth is learned and absorbed. So at this point in our lives, in our great awakening, we're undoing everything that we have learned to return to source. So what I do is when I see clients, I look at their birth chart, I explain to them what I'm seeing, and hopefully allow them to see nuggets of their strengths, perhaps their perceived blocks or weaknesses, and how they can alleviate those tensions so they can continue to do what is their life purpose work, and living within that realm and receiving prosperity at the same time. Because as you know, when you're doing something that you love, you're never working.
Yeah, that is true. That's how I feel with this. It's so fun. Okay. So we have to back up. So you mentioned a birth chart and all of that. Let's start from the beginning. Where do you get your information and what is a birth chart?
When an astrologer nowadays we have many resources online to do these things on our own, to be able to look up where our planets are. It's a wonderful time to be living in the information age. But in order to find your birth chart or to draft a birth chart, you'll need your date of birth. You'll need your exact time of birth. And you'll also need the place of birth, meaning city, state, country, all of that good stuff. If you do not know the time of birth or the exact time of birth because it wasn't notated on your birth certificate, which, by the way, is something that's rather common, you can still figure out what sign the planets are in, because planets move relatively slowly. The only planet that moves faster, it's not a planet, it's a satellite, is our moon. The moon changes signs about every 2.5 days. So if you happen to be born on a day that the moon is not changing signs, you will know what sign your moon is in. And that can be easily searched online through I use astro.com. I've been using that since 1995. It's kind of my go-to. As a matter of fact, I've been using it so long that I put most of Maine's coordinates in there as it was going along. And so once you find out that information, the reason why the birth time is so important is because it tells you what your rising sign is. Every hour and a half, the rising sign changes. And the rising sign in the horoscope begins your first house of expression, how people see you, how you're viewed by the world. And it also sets up the 12 astrological houses located in the birth chart. Now, the birth chart there are several, I'm going to go with the tried and true answer here, because now with all of these astrological apps, there are the grids and there are the glyphs. And I'm going to stick to the chart wheel, because this is how I've learned how to read astrology. And I kind of am one of those people that stick to that, even though I can use the other ones for beginners. The wheel is really the best way to go. The astrological wheel is a snapshot or fingerprint of the sky of where everything was when you were born, when you decided to enter this plane of existence, depending on how you view inception. So if we look at it in those terms, we are taking the planetary activity that was happening on your day of birth, and we're encompassing it into a chart wheel. And the time that you were born lays the lines down that differentiate. If you remember Trivial Pursuit, those little game pieces with the pieces of the pie, imagine 12 pieces of the pie.
We're so dating ourselves. I love Trivial Pursuit. I love it. Okay, yeah, that's a great visual. So there's 12 little pieces of the pie. Great.
Yes, there's 12 little pieces of the pie. The system that I use is the Placidus system. It uses the arc of the sun nowadays. In our technology age, I can plug this into astro.com and they do the configuration for me. So there isn't, pulling out one of those protractors, to make the signs and the arcs.
For all of you that need to go Google protractor, good luck. Mm-hmm.
I can't even believe I pulled that word out of my memory bank, to be quite honest with you. It's a win for today. But so I don't have to pull out a protractor, because thankfully astro.com does that for me. But basically, where your planets fall in houses, the houses are the expression. And of course, the corresponding sign has to do with how the planet expresses itself. So it's a layered process. But what I do want to mention about astrology that I find helpful for people to understand is that it's like geometry, it's like math, but it's not hard math. So there's a rhyme and a reason and a pattern that everything must follow. So something can't be here one day and boom, it's somewhere else the next day. And oh my goodness, what's happening in the sky kind of thing. Everything is predetermined. Everything goes in order. And there is a cognitive reasoning to what is happening in the process.
So it is very scientific. I was fascinated by that when you did my chart. It's very much about angles and signs and degrees and where this star is and where that planet is. And that's not going to change, right? Like you don't wake up one day and your rising star or rising sign changes, because that was how it was when you were born. So it's very cool to look at it that way. But let's back up. Okay. So why do stars and planets matter? You said the houses are like expression. But then what happens? So the stars and the planets are moving. And when a planet or a star is in your house, a certain house, what does all that mean?
So when we're talking about natal astrology, when you do look up your birth chart, the natal planets on the inside of the chart are stationary and they never move, like what you were just discussing. So you're not going to wake up one day and your rising sign has moved. I mean, when we talk about progressions in astrology, which is way advanced, that's something a little bit different. But on a basic level, wherever your planets fall in your chart is kind of a definition of what you're bringing into this lifetime. through personality, through the ability to have deductive reasoning or cognitive awareness or empathic body energy. What we look for, where are your planets? What signs are your planets in? First and foremost, and that'll tell you how each planet expresses itself in the sign. So, if you have a lot of water signs, you're going to be empathic and sensitive. Okay. If you have a lot of air signs, that's cognitive ability, the ability to be a high functioning processor, perhaps maybe a little bit introverted, lost in the mind, right? Because you're processing things. Fire signs have a lot of action. They have lots of energy. So they need to release that in a physical way. And then earth signs are very tactile. They can be very stubborn. They are security driven. They like to have security. So when we look at where your planets are located by element, we can understand the basic urge of the soul's need to feel safe, because really it's about safety. Where do we feel home inside of ourselves? And those are other things that you can see inside the birth chart. When we are looking at different ways in which we communicate and how we process information and how we express ourselves, we would look at specific planet placements. For instance, if we're talking about communication, we would look at where Mercury is located in the birth chart. We would look at what sign it's located in. We would look at what house it's located in. We would look to see if Mercury is retrograde at the time of birth. Another planet to look at is Saturn. Saturn is the planet of longevity, but when we look at a birth chart, especially in a child, we're looking at where their weaknesses are going to be, because throughout life, Saturn makes us the wisdom keeper of that area. And I'll give you an example. My birth chart, I have Saturn in Leo. It's retrograde and it's located in the third house. For anyone who's listening to this that doesn't understand astrology, that just sounded completely Greek.
Yes, it did.
But what you understand about Saturn is that it constricts things, and it makes that you have to do things slowly. It's a slow moving planet. So it makes you perfect things. And as you get older, you become a master at your craft, beginning in the very beginning at being the unstable fawn who can't get across the pond. So for me, the third house is communication. I have Saturn located there. Guess who had stage fright? Guess who could not talk in front of groups of people? Because my Saturn, my planet of restriction, was in my house of communication. And throughout my life, I have learned how to work with this to a place where I can be on a podcast with you. I can address a room full of women without my voice going into uncontrolled vibrato. So wherever we find Saturn in our chart, that's where our greatest difficulty is, but that's where we become a honed master of that skill as we progress.
So I'm thinking of parents with children with special needs. It would be fascinating for them to find out, okay, where does my child feel at home? Because that's what you were talking about initially, right? Is understanding where everything is then gives me as a parent the ability to say, okay, if I have a choice of A or B, and I know that A keeps my child at home without being interacting with peers, or B out and about interacting with peers, okay, how is that preference? And it's not to say that that's set in stone, but it is good to just know, like, okay, my kid's going to want to be at home a little bit more. Let's bring kids into the home before they're comfortable going out. Or, for example, what you're saying with speech. I mean, a lot of these children have trouble with communication. I'm so curious for you to read Teal's chart, because I want to know this stuff for her. Like, okay, where is Saturn or where is Mercury within her chart? Because I do believe it would really assist us in just understanding our children better. And isn't that our goal, especially if they're not able to talk to us?
Oh, absolutely. And I find that when, a parent is able to assist in this growth process, in a way that is conducive to their own flowering without pressure, that they come into their own a lot quicker because they feel safe. They feel secure and without judgment of their peers or being misunderstood. These are all learned behaviors. So along the line, when we were children, we kind of learned, what do we try to do, and what kind of response do we get, and that's how we decided how we express ourselves. And so, in the arms of the parents, wanting to understand how the child's process works, we allow the children to develop their own natural gifts in a way that's safe to them, where they thrive.
Right. Really fun. So could you take that and look at how a child learns best?
Yes, a really good example. I am blessed to have a beautiful 4-year-old that a good friend of mine has around all the time, and she's amazing. It's wonderful what little energy can do when they're around. But I love her birth chart, and I'm always looking at it because I want to find ways to communicate with her better. And she has, in astrology, a stellium is when you have four. I say three, but technically it's four planets in one sign, one house, or both. So it brings a massive amount of energy to that area. And she has a stellium in Taurus in her ninth house. So what does that mean? She has a lot of planets in an earth sign. So that means that she's stubborn. She has to learn things her own way. She doesn't really take suggestion. If we're playing a dinosaur video game, she has to lose 19 times until she figures that, even if you give her assistance, it has to be on her terms. But she also has these planets in the ninth house. The ninth house is spirituality, it's travel, foreign travel. It's the house of the teacher. So this child learns best by discovering things. This child learns best. She's getting ready to be homeschooled, and I've kind of written out her curriculum for her parents because of her chart placement, how she can best retain information and be excited about education, because these are the tools that you can receive from astrology. So for her, the ideal curriculum for her is to learn something a little bit and then take her to the location so she can discover, and then bring her back and give her more information. So it's kind of a layered approach. So that way she's excited and wants to learn, and doesn't shut down because she's not comprehending it, because she is the type of person that needs the experience and then come home and then devour the information.
Great. Wow. Okay. So you just blew my head off. Any child that's homeschooled, goodness gracious, this is amazing. I'm so excited. Okay. So pretty much what you're saying is you're able to help parents or caregivers or teachers, for that matter, understand a certain child better and how to meet them where they're at.
Yes. And when you can meet a child where they're at, there isn't resistance. Because, also coming from the parent standpoint, we need to look at the parent's chart and how they communicate with the child. What the synastry is between the two charts, how they can best meet somewhere where they're both understanding each other. If you have a very cognitive parent trying to guide an emotional child, where is the overlap here where you guys meet, where you can understand how this child feels, and they can understand how you think. It's about untapping it. We all have all the elements in our chart. We all have all the signs in our chart. We all have all the planets in our chart. So even if you are you have a lot of air signs, it doesn't mean that you can't access your water. The idea is to be able to have a symbiotic relationship with all of these areas in your life, so things start to open up. We can communicate better. So when we take the two styles of charts together, we figure out what the balanced communication is for success on both places.
And that's something that you can do is you can analyze one parent and a child. Could you also analyze a family? Not analyze, but you know what I mean? Read a family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The best way to approach that, I mean, after this podcast, I assume people are going to be rabbit holing on their children's charts. And I'm so excited for that because it opens up a whole new world of understanding your children. But you have to also understand, too, that this child came from a relationship between two separate beings, and, regardless of what the family unit looks like now. So ideally, what you would want to do is you want to look at the mother's chart and the father's chart, and take a peek at what they have in operation, because there's a lot of things that are passed down into the child's chart. Believe it or not, it's actually pretty interesting. As an example, again, my Saturn, which rules the parental figure, this doesn't work for everyone, but it works for me, is located in Leo. My father is a Leo. So it's fairly it's kind of, it blows your mind when it works out. It's very interesting how those things work out. But ideally, what you would do is you would do a birth chart for each parent. You would do a composite chart of those two beings together. And then you would take and look at the child's chart in comparison of those. So basically you're combining all this information to come into, oh, okay, these are factors into, the energy that the child's going to be experiencing. And to be quite honest, when I read someone's birth chart, I can find the relationship of the mother fairly easily. I can generally find the relationship of the father. I can find how the environment was in the home growing up, for someone who is my age, what was it like in the 70s? I could see that in the chart. I can also see the tendency of what you're creating in your own space as a result of that, or as a rejection of that sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. Well, you record your readings. Thank Goddess. That's her company name. Did you see how I just threw that in there? Yeah. Thank goodness that you do that, because it allows anyone that gets a reading from you to then go back. And you even said to me, you're going to need to listen to this again. And so you're absolutely correct, because I remember sitting there with you the first time, taking copious amounts of notes, not understanding any of it, right? Because I was like, oh my God, I don't know. Saturn, which house, Mercury, where, retrograde. Oh my God. And it was very confusing. And yet you were very clear. I just got caught up in, I don't understand. And so when I went back, and you were very clear, that's the cool part, is when I went back to listen to it, I was like, oh, well, all that makes perfect sense. It was really nice. And additionally, you opened my eyes to certain time slots, certain dates, certain windows that were going to be opening up or closing down or shifting and changing. Can you give me an example of, or even just talk a little bit about how that would be beneficial for parents with children, to understand when certain things are going to be really growing? And I'll stop. You can answer that now.
When we look at the birth chart, we have the stationary natal planets on the inside. Those never move. That's where they'll always be. And in astrology, we look at the transit planets on the outside of the chart. The transit planets are where the planets are today, and those planets are moving. They're the same planets as the ones in your birth chart. They just continued to move after we took that picture. Yes. And so in astrology, we look at the energy that's being presented to your own personal chart, and we try to figure out a way to navigate that in a way that is, conducive to spirituality, to learning, to moving forward, to breaking cycles, to all of these things. There's just so much potential in that. When we're looking at a child's chart, when we're looking at a very empathic child, we would look at Uranus transits. Where's Uranus placed? Uranus brings a level of anxiety. As a matter of fact, Uranus is a higher octave of Mercury. So it brings flashes of brilliance. It also brings, because it wants us to move, it's very erratic. It's unpredictable. So when Uranus activates natal planets in a chart, it can bring a level of anxiousness. Why is it important to know this? Because then we can find grounding exercises. We know the good days to perhaps maybe ground, not be in crowds, where the child can get overstimulated, especially if they have a propensity for that. We can look at Saturn transits to see where there might be a level of difficulty. Saturn takes 3.5 years to transit through a sign. So, it's a slow moving planet, but we'll be able to see, okay, this is where we're going to have some setbacks, but this is also where we kind of have to spoon feed rather than shovel feed information. So this child's not overwhelmed, because the way Saturn works when it is in transit is that it takes 2 steps forward and it takes 1 step back to go over everything to make sure that you've built a solid foundation. So it's learning slowly over time to master that area that it's going through.
Okay. So is there a house that is indicative of like physicality? And the reason I'm asking that is, so for a child that isn't walking, would Saturn show weakness in that house?
Yes. So if you have, you mean I'll talk about transit and natal.
Thank you.
So the 6th house in the astrological wheel is the house of the hair, skin, teeth, and bones, the body. Each house has a narrative, so to speak. And then we look at the sign that owns that house for the expression of that narrative. And then we look at the planets that are impacted and how they express themselves within that dome. So the 6th house is the hair, skin, teeth, and bones. It's your physical body. It's your routines. And I'm also going to mention the other things too, because there are so many things in this house. Not only is it your physical body, but it's also your service to others. It is small animals, and it's the house of the healer. So when we have someone who has the sun or the moon or Venus or a stellium of planets in the 6th house, these people end up becoming, nurses, doctors, or healers. So, and there's also whenever there's a loaded 6th house or personal planets in the 6th house, there is a telepathic communication with animals, because there's a massive connection with animals too. Yes, because we're in service to animals, and usually people who have planets in this spot are able to be stewards of small animals, protectors of them, so to speak. But back to your original question, when we have Saturn moving there transit wise, then
so that's the outside. So what you're saying, transit is the outside of the wheel when the planets are moving.
Yes. It's very good.
Thank you.
And so when transit Saturn is in your 6th house, we're looking at your routines. Are you burning yourself out by serving others? In a child, you would say, have we overloaded their schedule, and are they burning out? Do they have 10 play dates during the week because you want them to be socialized, when that really, what they really need to do is to be able to integrate what they've learned and process it.
I was thinking like, okay, if you're doing a lot of therapy, a lot of treatments, surgeries, things like that, it wouldn't be a good time to do that for a child.
It perhaps, but then the other part of it is that this is also the time to heal and to deal with things that are tough on the table. So if Saturn brings, like, it's sort of like a karmic presence too. So, if there's this surgery that needed to happen, this would be the time to have an immense amount of time to heal, because it's going to slow down that schedule. If we have Saturn there natally, it tends to, because it's the great constrictor, it would be children that are perhaps not the most athletic, perhaps underweight, the small kid that gets picked last for kickball kind of thing, or having their physicality get in the way of integrating with other children, or having anxiety about, integrating with other children through athletics, through activity, through bodily activity.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I cannot wait for more parents to reach out to you, because you are literally going to blow their minds out. I'm serious. This is just fascinating to me about how we really can learn how to be better parents. And whether or not your child has special needs or not, I mean, truthfully, it's just how to be a more present parent. But then, like what you did for me in my own chart, is how to be a better person. And when I'm more, like you said, when I feel more home within myself, I am a better human being, which then makes us all better people, which leads to better parenting, which leads to better children, etc.
Yeah. And I was really excited when you asked me to come on at this podcast, because imagine how different our lives would be if our parents had a greater understanding of who we were.
Oh, my Lanta.
Yeah. So the advantage that you're giving your child by fully understanding how they need to receive information and when they need to shut down and be able to process, it is going to give them the, as you said before we started taping, the level up, of being able to, process things in a way. It's not that everybody gets an award kind of processing and leveling up. It's more of a better understanding and actually a greater empathy for the world around them, because someone's taking the time to understand who they are, rather than having this resistance of not having the understanding within the home unit.
I love you.
I love you too.
And just, it's so exciting. I'm so excited. Okay. All right. So this is just the start of this conversation, I believe.
Yes.
And due to the length of a podcast, we are not going to continue. But I want you to come back and possibly, like we talked about, maybe reading Teal's chart and having people understand that, or just talking about, even just taking a whole segment to talk about Saturn or Mercury or Pluto or Uranus. You say Uranus.
I say Uranus. Some people say
Uranus.
There's so many
Some
different.
people like to say Uranus.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, some people do. It's all what you prefer. Okay. So I would like to do that. So I'm going to dangle that carrot for everybody that's listening. And then hopefully you'll give me some times in the future, because I'm so excited. Okay. So how can people find you? I know they can go to thankgoddess.org. They can find you at thank_goddess on Instagram, or as our foreign exchange student from Spain calls it, Insta. I love that. So on Insta, thank_goddess. You have a podcast that you're relaunching in 2022 called Star Medicine Podcast. Will you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So Star Medicine Podcast was something that came to be in 2020. And it's a live podcast, which is also recorded and then uploaded on iTunes and Spotify. But the reason why I love the live portion of it is that I can take callers. And so basically I talk about what's going on in the sky. There are different subjects I kind of bring in, especially if it's around a new moon or a full moon, how to manifest. Or maybe I talk about the north nodes, the south nodes, life purpose sort of stuff. And then at the end, I can take callers, and so I'll read people's charts. So it's a lot of fun for me, and it's also a lot of fun for the callers to kind of open up their spectrum of what's going on. I'm hoping that in 2022, I can get more into the planetary placements. It's really hard to try to fit all that in a podcast, as you know, with this specific one, but it's a labor of love, and it's my hope that I can get more and more people to awaken to looking at their own chart and hopefully opening up to the energy that's presented around them.
Yeah, it's another tool. It's just a tool that we can use as a parent, as a family, as a person. Okay, I'm definitely going to log into Star Medicine Podcast. That's on Spotify and iTunes. And then finally, what is Moon Lodge?
So Moon Lodge is this massive labor of love that I started back in 2018, and I have moved it to Patreon. So it's a Patreon account group, and you receive an invite to our private Facebook group where you have live daily practice. We have a yoga practitioner. We have yoga videos there. I come on twice a week and do astrology, divinatory practice, whatever's coming in. We have herbal support, and we have readers that come in, but it's basically a community for people to guide. help them guide themselves through their own consciousness, if that makes sense, using the energy that's available to undo cycles or be able to release things to get us to a certain place. I find that the age group that we have many women that are young, under the age of 18 up into the 70s. So everybody's interacting with each other too. So we share our life experiences. On Patreon, we have the astrology content. We have the tarot content to be able to, open up your divinatory practice to, understand what signs from the universe are. We do it through ceremony. We have a full moon ceremony every month. We also have a new moon meditation. So it's really been a wonderful platform for me to get creative and also do a lot of writing, because I really enjoy writing about the transits. It's very poetic. And also, even if something is, if you read something and something is unnerving, this transit's unnerving coming up, there's this pandemonium that, we're going to have this conjunction. The way that I write about it is looking at it from a place of how can we use this energy to better serve us? And what is this really looking at? And so that's what I use astrology to help people go through, their own psychology, their own patterns, their own processes, so we can get to a place of being completely open.
Nice. Yeah, it's a really good approach that you bring to the table, because I was introduced to you on Enlightened Empaths, because you come on there often and talk about what's going on. So go check that one out as well, that podcast. But you're really good at saying, hey, yeah, Mercury's in retrograde, but that's not all bad, right? We all go, oh my God, Mercury's in retrograde. And it's like, well, no, but everything has a different side. So I love it how you always are bringing that to the forefront of, if this is not all bad, let's talk about how you can utilize this to better serve yourself, which is what you just said. So thank you for that. I am so very excited that you took some time. I can't wait to have you back. And we will leave all of the information in our show notes, and they can go book an appointment with you at www.thankgoddess.org.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, Jenifer.
You too.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found one or two meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.